Okay, when we talk about financial literacy, financial literature in school, what is the rationale? And I want you to couple this when it comes to the issue of gender.
Okay.
Yeah. When you look at the current financial inclusion strategy, men are still in the lead when it comes to access to financial services compared to women. So what is the importance of financial education with regards to bridging the gender gap when it comes to financial literacy?
Okay. No, thank you so much. Probably, I think for the benefit of our viewers out there, just a brief line about who FSD Zambia is. So the Zambian Financial Sector Deepening Limited, or FSD Zambia in short, exists as a market facilitator. And our role really is to be able to promote a market where financial service providers are coming up with products and services that the end clients or the end users of finances are able to utilize. So based on that, in terms of promoting utilization of finances or financial products and services, this is what led FSD Zambia to also consider coming up with a financial education supplementary literature. Why did we do that? As per your question, to say what was the rationale? First and foremost, I want to spring from a basis that catch them whilst they are young approach. Because we realized that from our FinScope survey that was done in 2020, there is still disparity between women and men when it comes to financial access. We're talking about a general accessibility of 69%. But however, is when you look at the men and the women are at 71%, whilst the women are at 68%. So with that gap, it actually shows that the inequality, the gender inequalities still persist from, maybe from when boys and girls are growing up until you see it in adulthood when it comes to access to financing. So what we did is the rationale for the financial education supplementary curriculum was to be able to say, if we introduce, and now we are talking about grades 8 to 12, for the grades 8 to 12, we already know that the gender disparities, again, impacts on the female learners. Because the female learners from the primary to secondary, we are still seeing that the female learners are constituting something like 20%. So with that, it already implies that when it comes to financial accessibility and utilization, we will still continue seeing the gender disparity. So our focus was to ensure that we bring it into the school system. So we can be able to influence a kind of attitude, behavior, and practices where the young ones will learn how to use money. They'll learn what saving money is about, and they'll also learn what investing money means. So at that point, then we are desirous to be able to see that as they get into the industry, both the female and male learners will adopt that kind of approach towards finances. And this is why for us the financial education supplementary literature is a very important aspect, because we see it as a game changer. We see it also as one of the contributions to addressing financial inequalities, so that maybe as we go in the future, as we do FinScope surveys, we should be able to see the accessibility, but also most importantly, the utilization of finances to the benefit of the end user. And of course, by and large, I think why we even went to the schools is our focus as FSD Zambia is mainly around the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And we know that mainly the people at the bottom of the pyramids are the women, the young people, those living with disabilities. And those are the ones we are targeting with the financial education supplementary.
So in the spirit of catch them while they were young, maybe one would be interested, why grade 8 and 12 specifically targeted? Why not grade 5 or 7?
Okay, so it's a process. It's an ongoing process. So I think when we started this process, we realized that working with grades 1 to 7 is going to take a lot of time and is going to take a lot of resources. So we actually also wanted to, because it's been a learning process, a lot of lessons, challenges. This is work that has spanned 5 years. And so we thought when we learn our lessons from grade 8 to 12, then we can now go into the 1 to 7, which is more intricate and more complicated because we are dealing with very young learners. So I think this is the approach that we took. it was relatively easier to deal with 8 to 12 than it will be dealing with 1 to 7, because I think 1 to 7 will also involve translation, now local languages and, all that. So I think with all the lessons that we've picked up in the last 5 years of developing the curriculum, we're now ready to venture into 1 to 7. So that was our approach.
Okay. You're watching Music Tonight, and we are looking at the importance of financial education in the Zambian School Curriculum. And my guest is the Chief Executive Officer from FSD Zambia, that is Ngwase Mwale, and of course, Rose. You see, I'm so ingrained in FSDZ that I know everybody, even those who are not here. So Rose is with me this evening in the studio, and I'm quiet to be able to discuss this important subject and building on what you've just said, Rose, the issue of targeting grade 8 and 12 specifically. For those that are watching us right now, for the purposes of learning more about the project and owning the project, and I know that FSD Zambia is not on its own doing this. There are other strategic partners. Yeah. So just bring us up to speed with that.
Yes, thank you so much. Like I said, it's been a process. And so, like Ngwase has said, we're a market facilitator. So we work with different partners. The content that we use to develop the curriculum was contributed to by other actors in the market. So we worked with different regulators like Bank of Zambia. We worked with Zambia Revenue Authority, Securities and Exchange Commission, Pensions and Insurance Authority, BARS. We also worked with, first maybe also to mention that the funding for this project was actually given to us by SIDA through the WIN project. But also our main partners have been Ministry of Education through the Curriculum Development Center, who are the ones who have helped us to develop the curriculum. But of course, it's been a very long, rigorous consultative process with various key actors, as well as the Federation of People Living with Disabilities, because we also want to make sure that the materials are inclusive in that regard. So we have, other a lot of partners that have worked on this, and for us, we've just been facilitating the process. And the ones that have really been technically giving us the content are the people that I've mentioned, and of course the Curriculum Development Center, who are the ones that are mandated to develop any form of curriculum, are the ones that have been spearheading this process.
Okay.
Yes.
And also coming back to you, and I know that you did elaborate a little bit on the objective of the project, but I would like you to just expand further on that. And adding to that, I know that implementation, you're dealing with people that are in a system or used to a system that, in my opinion, I would call linear, for lack of a better term. Be good in English, pass mathematics, and that's it. You're good to go. If you are good in chemistry, obviously you're going to be that. So how has implementation been when it comes to also changing the mindset of the students to understand the importance that as much as I pay attention to English and mathematics and science, I need also to pay attention, to financial education, financial literacy?
Okay, first and foremost, I think this particular intervention did not just happen with the launch now. We undertook a pilot initially in about 20 schools. And we interacted in our various, program implementation. We interacted with the young population widely so. And we did that to be able to appreciate what their aspirations were when it comes to financial education. And also, like Rose has mentioned, in interacting with our different stakeholders in the financial sector, we also recognized that there was need to be able to focus in a very special way on the young population, and getting into the school system was very strategic for us, because we felt that if we need to be able to positively influence attitude, behavior, as well as the way money is viewed, and we begin it from a school system and it's incorporated within the curriculum, then we're going to be able to get a kind of focused attention to it. And one of the things that we also did is that we also engaged the teachers, because we realize that we can't just get to changing attitude and behaviors of the learners if we don't bring the teachers to also recognize and appreciate the fact that it's important to look at financial education. So having done that, and the pilot results actually, went further to affirm that there was that cry or that desire by the learners to be able to incorporate financial education within the general curriculum. So as we do that, of course, we are saying we are just launching now to be able to roll out later. But from what we learned in the pilot, it is our anticipation that this will definitely be appreciated and it will be embraced, by the learners, because we actually saw, even working with the Ministry of Education and the CDC themselves, they showed quite a great desire to be able to make sure that this particular subject comes out. Because we know that you can be a very good scientist, you can be a very good mathematician, you can be a very good lawyer or anything, but without that financial discipline, it will actually be very difficult for one to actually, progress to another level. Because one of the things that is part of this curriculum is entrepreneurship. We are trying to move the education system to be training, maybe students for white-collar jobs.
And passing exams.
We are trying to move beyond that so that then we can be able to raise a population that will look at themselves as creators of employment, creators of economic opportunity. And that is really something that we desire to see, and that's a kind of outcome, ultimately, that would want to see coming out of this financial education.
Charity, let me come to you. Rose. One of the things that when you're implementing a project such as this one, Rose, obviously in urban settings, it's a bit easier in the sense that the issue of language becomes easier, because most of these schools and learning centers have adopted English, but in rural areas there may be language barriers. But when you talk about other barriers that I think the three of us here have experienced, is when you are exposed to education, they're cultural barriers. It's like education will teach you this, culture is teaching you this, So in rural setups, as you're implementing this project, how are you trading on this particular ground where you have stereotypes such as a woman cannot focus on handling money in a home? It's the husband's duty, and I know that those that are watching us right now in certain homes, even some women get paid and give their husbands the money. Of course, that's a topic for another day. But building on that, because you see, these are cultural practices that girls get to grow up with. Irrespective of what they're taught in school, they find themselves in these conflicting situations, Rose, where they have to say, the teacher says I need to learn, but at home I'm being told that's not your job, it's the boy's job. So how are you trading on such barriers?
So it's very interesting that when we did the trial, we actually took on a peri-urban, urban and rural setup. And you'll be so shocked the results that we got from the rural areas. And I think when we sit here, sometimes we really underestimate the information that's out there and the kind of enthusiasm and just the advancement that has happened, even in terms of people living in the rural areas. We got a lot of positive feedback from the students, actually, from the rural areas, who at some point we were told they actually wanted to hold on to the books, the trial books. They didn't want to release them because they were very excited about the content that they were learning. So yes, as much as there are these barriers and, the social norms and, that relates to finances and how girls are restricted. I mean, from the cultural point of view, we are told a girl who loves money will end up being a prostitute, things like that. But these are some of the things that we are trying to address. And trust me, we should have launched these materials a long time ago. But then at some point, when we expose these materials to some of the countries that have already done this kind of projects before, they actually told us to no, wait a minute, can you make sure that you are also addressing issues of behavior change and attitude change? So we are not just providing information, but we are now looking at how do we impact the attitudes and behaviors of the young people. So that's why this process has taken very, very long, because we also had to address all those issues of, silent social norms that, are curved around money and the use of money by both boys and girls, starting at a very tender age. And so you see that the graphics that we have in the books are very, inclusive, gender-wise, and, so we had to pay attention to all those details. And so the books that we'll be launching would not just be providing information, but we are also addressing issues of attitude, behavior, practices, so that when people get the knowledge, they actually now use it at an individual level, and also impact the households, because when these young people go back to their homes, they do talk to their parents, they talk to, friends in the communities, and so we actually want them to be agents of change in terms of, financial education or financial inclusion. Young people are very versatile, and, they're able to do a lot in terms of sharing information. So, that is the reason why these books have really taken long, because we had to pay attention to all those details. Yeah.
Building on Rose's submission, Ngwasa, what are some of the challenges that you have encountered whilst implementing this important project?
Look, I think there are quite a number of challenges. First and foremost, we all know that information is power. So one of the things that we endeavor to do through the financial education supplementary curriculum is to make information available in a timely manner, but in a manner that is usable and will be easily understood by the learners. So that's number one. Secondly is that we still continue to find within the communities the challenge where the youth tend to have this sense of entitlement to say, if we got, for example, youth empowerment fund from the government, it is our money, so we don't necessarily need to pay back. So that sense of entitlement without really investing into sustainable futures, to say, if we are using this money to be able to empower ourselves, how do we create an opportunity to be able to empower others? So one of the things that we're trying to be able to change is to bring in a mindset that will be futuristic, a mindset that will embrace sustainability. Because, we have now an environment which is looking at inclusive growth, and also an environment that is focused on taking services to the people. And we're saying, for example, the CDF, if we continue to have the young population with that sense of entitlement where they feel we can get this money and don't pay back, it's definitely going to jeopardize our development agenda as a country. So what we hope to see is that to turn the youth, like Rose said, into ambassadors or, champions of change around their financial inclusion as also financial matters, so they can be able to grow up in a kind of with a financial discipline, if I can put it this way. Finances also which they'll be able to look at as growing for themselves, not just for themselves, but also for the next generation. So those are the challenges that we are hoping we can address by engaging the learners 8 to 12 who are almost being prepared to get into the industry. So it is our hope that with time, for those that will be getting into the market, if I can put it this way, especially for those that will be getting into the financial sector, they will have that mindset of, bringing about innovative, products and services that will add value, that will promote real sector value, for example, to be able to push the socio-economic outcomes that everyone needs to be able to see. So I think it's quite intricate in terms of the looking at the different facets, especially if we change this mindset of thinking that we can get this and we don't need to pay back whatever financing. But then even for the CDF, I think what already we saw within a public domain, that when it comes to access, there is still that challenge, because people are still waiting to say, how do we get, or what is in it for us, without really thinking to say, how do we utilize these finances to be able to grow our economy, but also to contribute to sustainable development. So ultimately, I think those are some of the challenges that we have seen, and we are hoping this particular curriculum will be able to address that in the near future.
Okay. You raised something quite important there, and of course you've given us insight onto some of the challenges from an FST perspective, but based on your interactions with some of these pupils and different students and different communities, what are some of the barriers that these pupils face, as a result of lack of financial literacy that you've seen firsthand?
So I think the barriers are a lot, like Ngwasi has said. Just the lack of information is one of them. But then apart from that, it's also just the usability of the products. So the banks are designed for the working class, for example, you and I who actually have accounts. But for young people, it's very difficult for them to actually just open accounts because they don't have income, and and because of that, they don't have access to services and products. There are very few services and products that are designed for young people in the financial market. So those are some of the the challenges that the outcry that our young people would tell you about. But of course, with the coming in of the digital financial services, and it has really made life a little bit easier for them, because a lot of them will actually use their phones to access financial services. But of course, we also see barriers in terms of the rural and urban divide, where that is concerned. But most of the young people actually just tell you that one of the challenges that we have is that we are ready to start businesses, we are ready to start, whatever entrepreneurial activities, but very few people will take us seriously, just for me to walk to the bank and say, I want a financial service or a product. As a young person, they'll ask for collateral, which I don't have, and things like that. So we are hoping that when we start them young, the way we actually want to, they will actually learn how that you can actually start very small. Sometimes it's access to informal financial services in terms of village banking services, and then you graduate and you're able to access the formal financial services and products. So we are encouraging young people through initiatives like this to ensure that they first and foremost just lay a very good foundation for them to be able to appreciate just their interaction, have a healthy interaction with money, and then they graduate into responsible adults when it comes to the way they handle personal resources, family resources, and national resources. So within that curriculum, you'll find that there are issues of accountability, for example, there are issues of corruption, for example. So when you talk corruption, most of the times we talk like it's for the older generation. But trust me, if we don't address this issue while the children are still in school, you find that it will be something that they'll think is normal. So we actually have topics like that in that curriculum, which very, very interesting and really focused on changing attitudes and behaviors. So in terms of challenges, I think the challenges are many in terms of access to products and services, but we are very hopeful that with initiatives like this, we'll be able to address some of those challenges, because the first and biggest barrier is just information. And information in terms of even the education, because you can be aware about something, but you don't have the skill. So this is a curriculum that will provide not only information, the skill, but it's also centered on attitudes and behavior change for the young people.
Maybe I can add something in terms of one of the things that we're also trying to demystify with this particular program is where the young ones tend to be intimidated to walk into a financial institution. So that becomes a barrier for their own innovation. So through this particular
even guards
program,
actually will stop young people. Some guards,
So and as a result, you find their innovation, gets hampered. Then they are not able to speak to, a financial experts within a bank, for example, to be able to grow their ideas. So that is one of the things that we are trying to demystify, because when they are exposed to financial education from a young age, then they will realize that, walking into a bank is something that would definitely enhance their own creativity, and also to try and just take their innovations to another another level. So that's, I thought I could just add that bit also, because apart from the issues of collateral, it's just being able to take that bold step, to go and talk to a banker, as we know them in our country. A lot of young people feel intimidated, like, where do I start from? Meanwhile, when you speak to them from a kind of, in an ordinary environment, what they have are very bright, ideas, innovation that can actually change their own situation. So I think that's one of the reasons that...
I totally agree with you. And I know that financial institutions are making significant efforts to ensure that they improve their customer service, their customer relations, and all these aspects. But again, like I've been in situations where a girl in school uniform walks through a bank, and me, who was in a short, was allowed to enter the bank without questions. And this girl stood, hey, hold on, what are you going to do? Are you going to see anybody in there?
Yeah.
So I think I very much agree, and those are some of the small areas that need to be worked on. But let me get back to you, Rose. I know that FSD Zambia has been, actively involved in the financial sector, working with different stakeholders to champion the agenda of financial literacy, inclusion. And one of the initiatives, that I know FSTZ has its prints on is the issue of savings, developing a culture of savings that is, precipitated by literacy. How important is financial education, supplementary literature to developing and solidifying such kind of initiatives? I'm looking to initiatives in Gwase where when you start, it lives on. You don't have to go back in there. Why? Because people are grounded. It becomes a lifestyle.
So one of the things that we also piloted was a board of delivery for the materials. So one of the things that that actually came out from the trials was the students or the pupils themselves expressed interest in coming up with financial education clubs in the schools. So it is something that we were very wild about, we were very excited about, because we thought if we are getting that kind of feedback from the pupils themselves, it simply means they are ready. So of course there'll be a lot of exciting things that will come out, because we want this to be very practical. We just don't want it to be theoretical, but we want it to be practical. So once we roll out and we evaluate the impact and even just monitor the kind of effect that these materials will have on the students or the pupils, we are hoping that some of the initiatives that will come out of these will be maybe savings clubs from in the schools, or financial education clubs, for example. So working with the Ministry of Education is something that we actually will discuss, and we'll see how we'll be able to maybe initiate. We hope the Ministry of Education themselves can initiate such innovations from within the schools, because it's not enough for them to just have the information, but we want them to learn the practicality of, for example, serving. So if I'm given lunch money, and instead of chewing all of it, for example, I can serve something, and maybe at an interest it grows, and maybe at the end of the term or at the end of the year I'll be able to get something from my savings, which will be so we are hoping that some of those the initiatives that will come out of, but then also enhanced educational tours, which is part of the curriculum. We want to see that children learn. We have education tours and go to the banks, for example, and we demystify the banks, and they are not just for people that work. So when you talk about that young girl who stopped at the door, we also work with regulators and the financial market actors, and like you were saying, they're making every effort to ensure that they cater for everyone and no one is left behind. But it's a question of now changing attitudes. The young people begin to see banks as places where they can comfortably walk in, and when you're working in the bank, I think they need to know that there's also a culture. For example, you can't just walk in the bank and you are dressed in a certain way, that kind of a thing. You have to be, they're young people, but we also need to know that there are certain etiquettes that they need to, observe, even as they are getting into certain offices. So we are trying to just promote that culture. It's a dual kind of responsibility. The actors are doing their bit, but also just learning, teaching the young people to say there's a certain way in which we need to carry ourselves. You can't go in a group and you're making so much noise in a bank, things like that. So those are the things that we hope will come out of the curriculum that we are, we are trying to launch.
Tonight, we are discussing the importance of financial education in the Zambian School Curriculum. And of course, I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of FSD Zambia, Ngwase Mwale, and Director Gender, Youth and Financial Education, Rose Namkwai. Ngwase, coming to you, there could be, in fact, I know for a fact that there are a lot of young people that are watching this broadcast right now via our various social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Airtel TV Plus, and they're interested in this curriculum. You know, they're interested in this initiative. But the question that they're asking is, okay, so it sounds brilliant, but what skills am I going to get from this program?
Well, I think it's Rose touched on it in terms of the content of the curriculum, because we're not just looking at discussing what money is, for example. We are also, you know, the part of the content is talking about the various savings models that the financial institutions offer, and also some of the opportunities that exist on how to invest money, where we'll be encouraging the young ones to say, once you invest, you'll be able to see your money grow, and your money, will be able to do something for you in the future. You know, that is, it's going to create that futuristic kind of mindset, for those that will engage with it. There is also aspects of entrepreneurship. I mean, entrepreneurship skills are very, very cardinal in terms of creating an environment where, like I said before, you have the young ones who are not just going to be looking forward to getting employed, but will create a cadre of young population of this country that will be looking forward to be creating employment. So those skills will be imparted, through this curriculum. And like also Rose mentioned, there's the issues of creating an understanding of what taxes mean, and what taxes are able to do, for the population. Because many a times we hear of this tax evasion, and that is why most of our young people probably do not want to formalize their ideas, their innovation in terms of getting to the financial institution for fear of being taxed. But once they understand through this curriculum that paying tax has benefits, to the citizens of this country, then they'll be able to gladly, formalize. Because I think one of the things that we're looking into doing with this curriculum is that we'll create a mindset in the young ones that it does not really pay towards the sustainable future if one remains in an informal sector. So how do we create incentives through information that will be provided through the financial education curriculum to be able to encourage, to be able to move from the informal to the formal? Because when you go into the formal, there definitely are going to be quite a number of benefits that will just also generate, other opportunities to be able to make sure that access to basic services, for example, by other people can also be opened up. So there's quite a lot of benefits and a lot of skills that will be gained for those that will interact with this curriculum. We may not see it in the next 1 year or so, but I think over time, once the curriculum is rolled out for most of our schools, we are hoping to see a kind of young learners that will come out of their schools to get into the industry prepared, with that financial discipline that they need to be able to grow their ideas.
You've mentioned something very important, the informal sector, and the majority of parents that are working hard to send some of these children to school are actually earning their income from this informal sector. So is there engagement by FSD Zambia with parents also to solidify what the children will learn from school? Because obviously children have got specified authorities in their lives. Teachers, parents are among those.
Yeah. So I'll mention something, probably Rose will add more detail. So one of the things we are doing, especially in the rural areas, is we are promoting the informal savings groups, where, especially for women, we have encouraged them to come into groups to begin their savings, but also, where they are able to give each other loans. But other than that, we are also providing financial literacy. We are providing business management skills. We are also providing entrepreneurial kind of approaches, so that with the little money that they are able to save and maybe probably obtain loans through the savings groups, they can be able to grow their businesses. So that is one avenue. And we're doing that under our informal finance program. And besides that, I think one of the things that Rose is excited about is the couple savings model that we have started, because we believe that we need to also to get the parents, even if they are in that informal setting, they begin to save, like as couples, to to just, promote that transparency when it comes to, financial matters, and also to be able to deliver financial education to parents, both, male and female, in a kind of environment that will also enable them put their ideas together and grow. So we believe that in that using that model, we can then be able to bring in entrepreneurship aspects where we're also encouraging them to register their businesses, so that then they don't remain in the Kantemba arrangements forever, but they can now register their businesses. They can also get to see how they can grow their businesses over time. So we also facilitate, working with the stakeholders in the market on how they can build or come about with business strategies. So then they will be able to say, within 1 year, we are going to grow up to this. This is what we can add to our business. Within the next 2, 3, 5 years, we should be able to grow our business such that we can also create employment for others. So that is the approach that we are taking, which is futuristic, but also an approach that is promoting a kind of sustainability with what it is doing, so that we can move our communities.
And let's accommodate Alan Mumba, who's joining us from within Lusaka. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mumba.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Very much okay. You're through to the program. Quickly, what is your comment or question?
I don't even know the program necessarily because I'm just driving and I've just reached home now.
Okay.
My main concern is about these so-called boosts which are being removed just because of AU, African Union, whatever summit which is there.
Okay, unfortunately, that is not what we are talking about, Mr. Mumba. We are discussing the importance of financial inclusion in the Zambian school curriculum, the importance of children being exposed to education that has to do with financial management. That is what we're looking at. However, if you want to submit thoughts on that, I will encourage that you tune in to Diamond TV during Diamond Live that comes after the main news on that platform. I believe you can be able to, submit those thoughts and, get your voice heard in that regard. But thank you for coming through and joining us this evening. To those of you that are watching, you can still participate in this conversation by simply letting us know what you think. And we are discussing the importance of financial education in the Zambian school curriculum. Building on what Ngwase was saying, Rose, I'll come to you. Another important stakeholder, I love the holistic approach, bringing in couples and everybody else, brilliant. But another important stakeholder that forms or plays a key role when it comes to governance in any facet we could think of comes from the religious circle. So the teacher may say saving is good, and mother may say saving is good. But remember, there's another voice that is constantly talking to the child. It may be once a week on a Sunday or Saturday or whichever day, in a mosque or wherever, But this is an important voice also that teaches a child. Does FSD Zambia collaborate with such stakeholders as well?
I'll leave that to Ngwase. I don't think that we have any programs, but you see, when we go in the community, we do not choose. We do not say that, we are going to only collaborate. Like, for example, the couple savings innovation that we have. When we're brainstorming around it, we're thinking, what would be our entry point? Where do we find these couples when we go in the communities? Yeah. So I think when we did a brainstorm, we actually found that a number of them will actually be found in the church. So one of our entry points to get to the couples will actually be the church. So we have that holistic approach, and for us, financial inclusion is supposed to be everywhere. So when we talk about couples and just changing of attitudes and behaviors, we're not leaving anyone behind. So I think we haven't really started that program, but we actually looking at going through the church, because that is where we'll find couples and issues of financial. Some financial education which is provided to couples when they're getting married. We want to build on that and build on it and see how we can ensure that beyond just the young couples, there are also older couples in the church that are serving together we call it gender responsive budgeting at household level. So that's what we are trying to promote through the innovation like couple savings. So we are coming to the church.
We're already there.
Yes. So we are not leaving anyone behind, really.
Zambia is a Christian nation, and the majority of Zambians go to church, and we know that the churches nowadays have evolved. I think, from at least speaking from my church's perspective, one of the things that we are now trying to interpret is that the church should be seen to be meeting the people's needs, or meeting people at their point of need. And it's precisely also looking at some of the socio-economic aspects. Because when you go to church, apart from just reading the Bible, there is also what we call doing, or the church coming up with programs that meet the aspects of the churchgoers in a very humane way. And you cannot deny the fact that socio-economic aspects, they have a larger implication on the growth of the church. We know that the church now in Africa, in Zambia to be specific, is no longer dependent on the goodwill of external support. Most of the churches now are being supported by the church members, by the congregation. So it's in the interest of the church itself that its people are actually financially sound in order to continue to grow the church. Because even if you look at discipleship or any evangelism, there's money involved. Where does the church collect that? So I think, for like Rosa said, the church is an integral part of who we work with and how we bring them into being. Because if the church members are financially healthy, and the church members are able to save the underserved, the ones that we focus on as FSD Zambia, it means our ultimate constituency as FSD Zambia and the church is the same.
Okay.
So we are already there.
Let me now draw your attention to the issue of, I know that we are still, people are calling it post-pandemic, but of course, the reality of scourges such as COVID-19 is very much, among us. And one of the things that I had noticed with the COVID-19 is that among the people, when you talk about vulnerabilities between men and women, economic vulnerabilities were high in women, and how important are initiatives such as this to ensuring that economic shocks, necessitated by COVID-19 and other variables are mitigated, especially among women who have been identified as a constituency that is marginalized when it comes to financial access, to financial opportunities, and other, dividends that one could think of?
So I'm happy to actually report that one of the things that we did when we were developing the curriculum with CDC and other actors was the fact that we could not just let this pandemic, go like quietly pass by. We have these materials that we've developed, and we actually needed to ensure that we see how we can mainstream like pandemics in financial inclusion, for example. So there's a segment of that talks to in the curriculum that talks to just how you handle shocks like pandemics, the COVID pandemic that we are just in right now, or whether it's post or we are still in it. So it's not something that is silent, but we actually looked at it because we thought maybe 10 years from now we'll not, posterity will judge us harshly if we do not, we develop materials which do not actually, answer to the issue of something that was so prevalent at the time that the materials were being developed. So we actually stopped to think, okay, how do we then just have even just a little bit of a section on a pandemic and the impact of pandemic on financial inclusion, and how do you deal with issues of that, pandemics, for example. So we were very cognizant of that, and like you said, the pandemic was very affected the women much more than it, because women are the ones that go out there to sell in the markets, and they are the ones that make sure that they take care of the households, and so they were, when there were these lockdowns, they were really, really affected. So we thought we could actually address that, and there's a little bit, it's not so comprehensive, but it's there in the curriculum.
I'll throw this to both of you, but I'll start with Ngwase. Studies have indicated that women are better managers of money. Of course, others will argue, but there are studies, credible studies, that have actually indicated that women are better managers when it comes to money. Yet, when it comes to access to financial opportunities, the favor is skewed towards men. Where is the challenge? Well, why can't the data that shows that women can manage money better be able to correspond at the level of ensuring that there's equal access?
I think if you have to look at it in another angle, is that having interacted with a number of financial service providers in Zambia, there is indication that has come out that most of our banks, most of our financial institutions actually prefer lending to women or to females, or because of the precisely what you've mentioned, to say women are better payers or repairs of whatever loans they get. And also when it comes to managing money, women are able to apply a kind of more holistic way of using the resources, no matter how meager the resources is. You'd give my mother 100 kwacha and you'll be able to tell her to say this 100 kwacha is for food, for a week. She will be able to manage to stretch it, and make sure that, the family has something to eat. And those studies are first and foremost indicating that bit. But when it comes to access to economic opportunities, we know what is at play. In most cases, it's an issue of the power aspects, but also secondly, when it comes to literacy levels, you find that most of the times women are lower in terms of the literacy levels, and because they are not able to access information that will be able to enable them to access the finances that they probably need to make sure that their innovation or whatever ideas they have, they can grow them to another level. And then secondly is the issue of confidence, because many a times we find that women are not on the platforms where you are discussing ideas, you are discussing innovative ways of being able to grow their money, and so they miss out in terms of that information that would be able to help them to realize that actually if they are able to get a 10,000 more, they can actually do much more. So it's those particular spaces, because we know that when it comes to participation, women are still lower in terms of numbers around participating in a number of development processes. So they miss out in terms of their own contribution, but also for them to, to benefit from information that will be able to enhance their own livelihood. I think that is the reason.
Just a little
Let me,
let me just add.
Due to the interest of time, you can actually marry it with this.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah, but what I'd like to find out from you briefly, Rose, is we know that this is just the beginning of the launch, of the FESL, and there is actually more that's coming, in terms of sensitization and just to be able to create buy-in for this important initiative. But people may want to know, what lies behind ahead of 20th July. We've seen powerful launches, ribbons are cut, balloons fly to, everywhere. And as far as the balloons go, that's how the project goes. So just on that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think maybe just quickly say that when we talk about what Egasi was saying, we're also having the social norms study where we are trying to actually understand what are some of the causes of the barriers, what are the gender and social norms that cause women to still be, relegated in terms of access and usability, despite the fact that they are better managers. So that study, I think we'll come and talk about it on another platform. But maybe just to say that for us, we are market facilitators. So our work, of course, we have collaborated with all the different actors, and there's a lot that we expect in terms of now we have developed this product and we are giving it to the market, and we are hoping that they'll run with it. But we will monitor. We will monitor for impact. We will also start working on the 1 to 7 curriculum, and we are hoping that there'll be a lot of interest that will be gotten from this, and a lot of actors will come on board. It's a very expensive process, so we are appealing to other partners to come and just see how they can buy into this, and we support the Ministry of Education to make sure that there's a rollout and to all the parts of the country, really.
Thank you very much, Rose Namukwai, Director, Gender, Youth and Financial Education from FSD Zambia, for joining us this evening, and of course the Chief Executive Officer, Ngwase Mwale, for also taking part in this important conversation. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we were looking at the importance of financial education in the Zambian school curriculum, and of course what has been predominantly established is that it is a skill, that calls for concerted effort from everybody to ensure that an initiative like this succeeds, because only then can we begin to talk about actualization of economic empowerment, irrespective of whatever opportunities are created. If people are not financially, abreast, and if people are not financially astute, it is very difficult to be able to make decisions that can lead to financial freedom. Thank you for watching, and remember, tonight's special edition is brought to you by FST Zambia. The name is Wenson Mavoro. See you next time.
Thank you.